wanted to go ahead and make a tier list for the characters in Tower of Fantasy. And how I'm going to do this is by putting this into a series and discussing each element. The reason why I'm doing this is because I strongly recommend that you focus on one element. So let's go ahead and discuss Frost, but I want to go ahead and disclaimer myself to where you might find some of these characters to be either higher or lower on the tier list depending on your situation. But I'm going to try my best to present this in a way that's best for everyone's budget. But at the end of the day, this is my opinion. So let's go ahead and talk about the playstyle of the current Frost team, which I'm going to be basing my rankings off of. So Yulan can either be on the field as a main DPS to where she does normal attacks and dodges, and she's just buffed by her teammates. Or she can be a powerful support to where she provides charge, AoE, and damage for our previous main support, Icarus. So let's go ahead and start this tier list off by talking about the standard characters. And the first being Coco, to where I'm going to put her into the S tier. And the reason being is because she's the best healer in the game, and she can remove debuffs. She's also one of the few standard weapons that has an elemental reaction, to where she can increase your frost attack as long as you have a frost weapon equipped. On top of that, she can increase the entire team's frost attack by 5% as long as she's in Benediction Resonance. For hard content, you're going to want either someone with a Coco or a 0 on the team. And when it comes to the recommended stars, 3 star is definitely the most important, but ideally you want to get all 6 stars because all of her star levels are very helpful for the team. And her matrices are also very strong, especially her 4-piece. The only problem is these are also the hardest matrices to get in the game. Some wells don't even have a full 3-star 4-piece set. And the reason for that is there is no way to farm these matrices. Most of your usual standard matrices have at least a boss that you can farm to hopefully get a matrix drop, but Coco was unfortunately left out. So now let's go ahead and talk about Marrow, and I'm just going to go ahead and put her at a C. Her biggest contribution is that she is a tank. But the unfortunate part about that is that we are getting Saki added to the standard pool in the next patch, and she outclasses Marrow in every way. And then there's the tanking element itself. A lot of people would much rather prefer just having 2 healers join the team than rather use a tank because it's actually more beneficial depending on the situation. Because again, as I mentioned previously, having someone with a 0 and another person with a Coco can greatly help the team. And for her matrices, they're basically only good for herself. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put these as bad. Then we got Tsubasa, which is not bad, but not great. So I'm gonna go ahead and put her at a B. The nice thing about her is that when she does dodge attacks, she can buff your team, but you mainly wanna try to get her to 6 stars to really take advantage of that. And speaking of her buff, Claudia's 1 star can compete with that, and if you get Claudia to 5 star, she's even better than Tsubasa. And another thing that Tsubasa needs is that she needs to dodge attack to activate her buffs, which could be bad when you're pairing her up with characters like Yulan. Plus, her animations are slow, which could lower your DPS. Personally, I recommend getting Claudia over Tsubasa when it comes to the buffing department. Now, her trait can be pretty useful when first starting out the game, and you do have to have at least 1 copy of her to activate her trait, but once Alice came out and every character afterwards generally has a better trait than Tsubasa. But those traits can be much harder to get to 4,000 since they need certain gifts. And lastly, her matrices are bad. So now let's talk about the new standard characters, and the first being Frigg. And I'm gonna go ahead and put her at an A. The reason being is that all you really need to do is just put down her frost field, and she just buffs your frost characters. And the more stars that you get on her, the stronger your frost characters will be. On top of that, she provides frost resonance, which will increase your frost attack. But all frost characters after her do the same thing, and this does not stack, unfortunately. For her matrices, they're okay. I wouldn't go out of your way to get them, but if you have them, they're better than usual standards. And in patch 3.1, Saki is going to be added to the standard pool. And I'm going to go ahead and put her at a B. The reason being is that you want to ideally have Saki at A1, which allows you to keep doing skill resets with frost characters. So when Saki came out, this was very strong, even though they have most of her values compared to CN. But if we look at the current state of the game, the frost characters are mainly focused on discharges and not so much skill resets. But when it comes to tanking, Saki's actually pretty good, to where she can taunt with her skill and hold the aggro with her surge ability. Ideally, you would like to get her to 3 stars so that way you can lower the cooldown of surge. And if you can get her to 5 stars, which is not needed but helpful to where you can proc Fantasias for you and your team. And the tank team could probably look something like Saki, Lan, and Coco. So now let's talk about our matrices, which are actually fairly strong, especially since they are background matrices. But do note that all matrices after Saki are stronger. But if you can pick up a set rolling for standard matrices, that can actually be pretty powerful. But you may not want to put all your resources into Saki matrices, because if Lyra gets added to the standard pool, getting a high star 2-piece Lyra matrices set is very powerful, especially for your main DPS. So I would rank these about a B. So now let's talk about Alice, which is actually a very good pickup, because all you really need is an A1 Alice. That way you get her clone, so that way when you cast a Frost skill, it will cast the skill again using Alice's clone. Another thing to note is that Alice may be added to the standard pool once the next Frost character comes out, since that'll be her third rerun, allowing you to get more stars for Alice to where you can get her A6, increasing your Frost damage. So I'm gonna go ahead and put her in the A rank. Now let's go ahead and talk about her matrices. Her matrices are not very good. One of the reasons being is that you have to have Alice on the team to use her matrices, and matrices after Alice are just much stronger. So I would rank these about a C. Which brings us to our previous limited character, Icarus. Now, Icarus is actually pretty powerful, especially if you use him as a main DPS. The only problem is, ideally you want to try to get a lot of stars on him so that way you can get more damage. On top of that, you can just main DPS with Yulan to where you don't need Icarus at all. Due to this fact, I'm going to have to rank Icarus as an A, since you need the stars and there's other comps that are just as strong. Plus, the Icarus comp is more expensive since you want to have Icarus, Yulan, and Fiona matrices to really get the full benefit. Which brings us to his matrices, which are actually very strong, to where all you need to do is have a Frost weapon to take full advantage of his matrices. But these matrices are outclassed by Yulan's. So I'm gonna have to go ahead and put these as an A as well. Which brings us to the new Frost unit, Yulan. Yulan is very powerful because she is able to be a support and a main DPS. Having A1 greatly increases her DPS, but even at A0, she's still very strong. So I would have to rank her as an S due to her versatility. On top of that, if you fully max out Frost, it is the strongest team right now. But generally expect when a new character comes out, that element will be the strongest, at least for the time that character is out. And her matrices, I'm going to have to give it an S2. They got buffed after the testing, so they are very strong. Having those matrices will be very powerful for the Frost team. Only downside is that you have to have Yulan on the team, but she is not going to be kicked off anytime soon. So here you can see the ranking of all the characters and matrices that I mentioned. Hopefully this will help you decide on which characters to go for if you decide to go with the Frost element. And look forward to my other videos discussing the other elements. And if you found this helpful, consider liking the video so that way it can spread more on YouTube. But other than that, I'll talk with you guys later.